The Simpsons, one of the funniest, groundbreaking, and culture-defining shows. 30 years ago. It's not controversial to say that The Simpsons isn't as good as it used to be. In fact, you could even say it's bad. A show can only do so much after 35 seasons, especially when your show raised the bar so high. The only people still watching The Simpsons now are those who have the cartoon version of Stockholm Syndrome, or the real Jims. The show has been on a downward spiral since the 2000s. Wait, what's that episode? Oh, we're not here to talk about how bad The Simpsons is, mostly, but rather look back at the time when it was good, the time that everyone makes memes out of, and the time when there were actual Simpsons video games. So let's take a look at the video games of a walking corpse. I mean The Simpsons. The first Simpsons game, and perhaps the most cherished, is the Simpsons Arcade game's port to DOS. The only port that was made for the game until the Xbox Live Arcade and PlayStation Network ports in 2011, until those got delisted. The DOS port is obviously inferior to the arcade game, and the hardest part is figuring out the controls. Your keyboard is set up like the arcade, where depending on which side you pick, those are the buttons you'll be using. So if you pick Bart, the controls are moving with the arrow keys, and then insert jumps and delete attacks. Is this a control scheme for crabs? I mean, it's cool that they accounted for multiplayer, but imagine just 4 people huddled around one keyboard. The gameplay is the same as the arcade game, although the hits feel way worse, and the sound effects are ass. Graphics are pretty good for DOS, and the most charming part of these old Simpsons games is seeing the character sprites. Like that little wiener Milhouse. Can someone get a tattoo of that Milhouse sprite? I will pay you nothing. This DOS port is tolerable. I wouldn't say there's anything offensively bad about it. If this port was released on Genesis or Super Nintendo, people would have unhealthy nostalgia towards it. I believe Acclaim had the licensing rights for Simpsons console games, so Konami only ported it to home computers. But let's be real, I wouldn't call the original arcade version a great beat-em-up. Good, but not great. It's visually appealing and fun to go through with friends, but its hit detection isn't the best, and its actual combat is very limited. This game came out during the first season, so there wasn't a lot to work with. Most of the enemies are original characters, and Mr. Burns already crossed the line from everyday villainy to cartoonish super villainy. Bah! I mean, instead of just taking the jewel out of Maggie's mouth, they steal a whole baby. At some point, the Japanese developers said fuck it and made one of the bosses a kabuki actor. It's still a fun beat-em-up, and it's one of the best Simpsons games, but it's a little overhyped. I think if the arcade game wasn't so elusive, people would be more critical of its flaws. But Konami made a fuck ton of money in the arcade, so it didn't matter. Back then, a licensed game just had to actually follow the license to be memorable. Which you think would be easy, but there were a ton of licensed NES games that would just make shit up. Speaking of, Bart vs. the Space Mutants was the first console game to capitalize on the show's success. This game came out on every single console, except for Game Boy, but there is a Game Gear version. These NES Simpsons games really showed us that the NES color palette did not have yellow. The story is that aliens have invaded, and they have disguised themselves as humans a la They Live. Bart even has the glasses for no reason. I noticed the disguised aliens and these little aliens are different from the main ones. Is this like a Prophet situation? Every level you have to get rid of certain objects so the aliens can't power their machines. The first level is purple colored items. It could only be purple colored items from Springfield. The alien weapon is too advanced to explain. So you have to spray paint purple stuff red. Wow, that's fucking cool. The NES controls are horrible. A jumps and B uses the spray paint. Start uses your items, and select is how you select your item. So how do you pause? Well, you press select and scroll to pause, and then you press start. Why even make it like this? So the worst part about this game is the jumping. You jump with A, but you can actually run by holding A. So if you want to run, you have to jump, then keep holding A. It makes running jumps impossible. I tried the Genesis version because I thought an extra face button would help. But no, you still hold jump to run. At least in the Genesis version, start actually pauses the game. And from the pause menu, you can just select your item with up and down. But you have to use your item right away, or else it goes back to the glasses. Both the NES and the Genesis version could fix the jumping problem by making the spray can an equipable item and using the other button for run. So the first level is trying to get rid of all the purple items or turn them red. Some you can just spray paint. Others you have to do some other bullshit to get to it. Like you have to jump on this ball to knock over this paint can to make the awning red. If you miss, that ball isn't coming back. Or you can accidentally discover you can bounce on the garbage can and then just knock over the paint can. I feel so accomplished. Or you have to fire a rocket at this bird to make them go away. By the way, you have to select the rocket, press use, then walk into it to have it actually take off. Otherwise, you just wasted it. It's like the worst kind of puzzles in a point-and-click game, except it's in a shitty side-scroller. When a person shows up, you have to use your X-ray glasses to see if they're an alien. Jump on their head and you get a letter for Maggie. Get all of them and Maggie will help you in the boss battle. If you grab the skateboard, you have to go forward avoiding obstacles. I know there are some kind of disgruntled, interactive entertainment enthusiast who over-exaggerate how bad old games are, but this one is really terrible.
Eat my shorts.
While Bart vs. the Space Mutants didn't come out on Game Boy, that year the Game Boy got Bart Simpson's Escape from Camp Deadly. The game starts with a message from one of Mr. Burns' relatives, Iron Fist Burns. Hold on, are those slaves in the background? Like, slaves? Your first grueling activity is capture the flag. That doesn't sound so bad. It's a side-scroller, and your attack is a spitball that just disappears halfway through the screen. Doesn't matter because the spitball doesn't do anything, and you'll quickly get a boomerang from Lisa that actually damages enemies. Advanced technique, fuck you. So I got the flag, hit a beehive, and now I'm dead. Oh my god, I really thought he was heiling right there. I really did not know how to get past the bees, so let's just say this sucks and move on. Bart vs. the World is kind of the sequel to Bart vs. the Space Mutants, and this one only came out on NES. The story in this one is that Bart wins a Krusty art contest that lets him go on an international treasure hunt, but it's actually a plot by Mr. Burns to wipe out the Simpsons. Why? Well, Mr. Burns' third cousin's Fu Manchu Burns will take care of the Simpsons in China. Is the Burns line like Genghis Khan? Like everyone in the world has 3% of his DNA? So this game uses the same controls as Space Mutants. So yes, you still hold jump to run. At least this one is more straightforward. On the level select, there's a platforming level that lets you progress, and the other ones are basic minigames for points. There's a sliding puzzle, slot machines, and even Simpsons trivia. Season 1 trivia. Ugh. These just get you a better score, and a better score gets you a better ending. But you deserve a medal if you can get any ending, because this game is hard. You can actually get a projectile in this game, so that helps. But, you know, it still sucks. This level on the Chinese ship is just collecting stuff, and all you have to do is get to this map sign. Then you unlock the level where you skate down the Great Wall. Jumps are weird, and the pseudo 3D is disorienting, but other than that, it's not too bad. You fight Fu Manchu Burns, and I really did not figure out how you hit him. Turns out you're supposed to hit his head when the fan is down, but most of the time he reflects your projectiles. Just keep aiming for his head and hope for the best. After that, you go to the North Pole, where you fight the indomitable Burns. Man, the Burns gene pool is fucked. Now, there is actual platforming on this ice level, and it really shows just how bad the controls are. You have to be pretty perfect since the stalactites on the ceiling can hurt you. And it's an ice level, so you're constantly sliding around every time you move. This is where I gave up. When you die, Burns celebrates by having some tasty alcohol. Substitute. You know they were messing with Nintendo on that one. Overall, this game is slightly better than Space Mutants, but it's still bad. Krusty's Funhouse was released on practically everything, and it's pretty obvious why. It's a puzzle platformer where you have to guide these mice into their killing machine. I like how Krusty asks kids to get rid of the mice, but just ends up doing it anyway. I guess he bet it against the Harlem Globetrotters again. A huge aspect of the puzzle solving is that you need to pick up this specific block and use it to help guide the mice to their death. The game doesn't make this obvious, but once you figure it out, it's just an okay puzzle platformer. Also, there's no real indicator that you got all the mice, so you have to exit the level to see if there's a lock on the door. There's no sound effect or anything like that. I assume all the versions are the same, And each one has this grating music that's just a 10-second loop over and over again. Combined with the boring gameplay, this one annoyed me pretty quickly. The simplicity is probably why it got released for everything, but it's also why this game is just meh. Bart versus the Juggernauts. Well, I think we all know how this will go. Nah, it's just a minigame collection. This one with the skateboard is similar to Bart versus the World, and you just have to build up enough speed. But this one with the panels is one of the most sadistic minigames I've ever played. You go around this grid avoiding the black tiles, and you have to carry this ball into this hoop. When the panels start flashing, they're about to reverse, so you have to get to an opposite one. This is already kind of challenging, but then there are actual fake outs. The panels will flash, but they won't actually switch, so you end up jumping to your death. Most of the time, you don't have anywhere to go, and you just have to wait for the panels to switch, except when they decide to trick you. It's absolute crap. Dr. Marvin Monroe tells players to overcome his or her gaming inhibitions and experiment, which translates to, we made this game with a bunch of random bullshit so you don't beat it as fast. Fuck you, Monroe. I'm glad you were never that popular. Here we have the end of what I unofficially call the shitty Bart NES Sprite trilogy. Bart Man meets Radioactive Man. Look at that little rapscallion. I hope there's an episode about him killing himself in 20 years. My god, it's a straightforward platformer. How did it take us 6 games for us to just go left to right? No open-ended levels, no fucking puzzles, no spraying garbage cans red. Just getting to the end of a level. Just like the last 2, you use A to jump and to run. B this time punches or uses your superpower. Why not just make the punch button also run? So basically, Bartman gets sucked into a Radioactive Man comic and has to save Radioactive Man. You get superpowers like laser eyes, which are handy, except for enemies that are lower than your eye line. Platforming is incredibly stiff, so even though there isn't any stupid, convoluted bullshit, it's still just a very below average platformer. Checkpoints are not forgiving in this game. I had to climb up this pile of junk multiple times, which, by the way, it's not very clear what's actually a platform. I get to the end of the level, and there's this little planet thing, and it takes me to a bonus level. I just start jumping on stuff, getting some extra platforms, and when I fell in the bonus zone, it takes me back to the checkpoint? You can die in the bonus stage? Imagine in Sonic 3, messing up in blue spheres counts as a death. I'm done with this. I can't believe Acclaim had 3 chances to make a decent platformer, and they kept making jump and run the same button. Sure, they got better, but it's like going from an F- to an F+. Oh shit, Bart. You alright? Here's one that I actually didn't know existed until I started this charade. Bart's House of Weirdness for DOS. At first, I thought it was going to be some sort of interactive activity book. Kind of like those Magic School Bus PC games. Anybody have one of those? I had the one where they went to space, and Arnold fucking died. There's actually not that much to interact with. In fact, if you interact with this Sideshow Bob toy too much, it kills you. You walk around the room and you discover these little mini-games. Well, they're more like shitty platform levels. There's one where you go through an Itchy and Scratchy cartoon, one where you fight the Space Mutants, one where you get tickets to the Space Mutants, and one where you fight skeletons in the basement. You know, they really used all the kids' show's cliches for these early games. If you just change some sprites, this could easily be a Wishbone game. The controls aren't great. You move with the arrow keys, you press spacebar to use your weapon, and you press enter to jump. And Bart's jump is pretty delayed. Look, I know universal keyboard controls weren't really established back then, but did anyone think this was optimal? The main problem with this game is that it's too damn hard. I mean, look at all this shit on the Itchy and Scratchy level. Look how you just have to memorize shit for the Space Mutants level. It's almost impossible to dodge this alien on the train track. And if you go back to get some more ammo, he hits you in reverse. What the hell? These Space Mutants just never give up. And when you get to the next screen, there's a robot you can't dodge at all. It's not like you can crouch or anything. I looked at a GameFAQs guide, and apparently the robots can't hit you if you have the special hat. Cool. I guess we know why no one talks about this one.
A toastified man man.
Well, we're finally getting to the Simpsons games people actually cared about, but not because they're good. Bart's Nightmare was the first exclusively 16-bit Simpsons game, coming out for the SNES and Genesis. This game takes place in Bart's Nightmare, and you walk around and shit, I don't know. See, when you start the game, you got this little overworld, I guess, and you just kind of walk around and get hit by a bus sometimes. What you are seeing is the same confusion a lot of millennials went through in 1992. So let me break it down for you. You're supposed to find these pieces of paper to jump into. When does the paper show up? Fuck you, that's when. You walk down the street, watch out for the buses that randomly appear. Those Z's on the top, that's your health. If you want more health, you have to find the blue Z's and shoot one of your bubbles at it. I don't know what the red Z's do. The old lady gives you a kiss that stuns you, but when Lisa turns you into a frog, the old lady's kisses will turn you back. Skinner will put you in your Sunday best, which actually makes you invulnerable but also slower. The saxophone notes will make your controls reversed. If you jump over the basketballs, they turn into a skateboard, which causes you to go fast and immediately eat shit on the tiniest crack. All of this stuff you have to remember is basically a glorified menu for a shitty minigame collection. The paper is the only thing that actually matters. Everything else is just there for points. The minigames themselves are pretty damn hard. You got this Indiana Jones one where you gotta make sure you don't step on too low of a platform, with the other platforms reacting to each other. The bacteria minigame is actually the easiest one, where you just pump up the enemies like Dig Dug. Your goal is to get the nuclear power plant mascot, which, god damn, he is one slippery little marketing gimmick. The Godzilla one has one of the weirdest control schemes I've ever seen. So the 3 face buttons fire your laser forward, down, and in the background, while the D-pad controls your fireball attacks. Up fires in the background, right fires forward, and down fires down. The tanks and helicopters are all in slightly different positions, so you can't just fire the laser at the helicopter in front of you. It has to be the fireball that's slightly lower than the laser. There's a Rampage clone after this, but I didn't get that far. The Itchy and Scratchy level is kind of like a beat 'em up, where you have to find the right weapon for each room and use it to beat both of them. This hammer is really annoying because it hits a little bit below where you actually are, so you have to be slightly above Itchy and Scratchy to actually hit them. Why can't anything make sense? Oh yeah, it's a nightmare. The first room is easy enough, but the second one just bombards you with a bunch of shit that's coming at you from every angle. No wonder why Bart looks so terrified. The final minigame is a shoot 'em up where you fly around as Bartman with your slingshot. Hey Bart, maybe next time you can dream of a projectile that doesn't suck? So you just fly through the air firing at stuff and then fight some mini bosses. I wasn't sure if the bosses had health because the goddamn cloud was in the way. It starts out simple. You kill Sherry and Terry, you kill Barney, but then you get to Smithers, with green hair I guess, and one of these missiles takes half your health. Then you get to these radioactive clouds that drain all your health just by grazing them. I mean, the Smithers fight was tough, but fighting Burns in his plane is unfair. I mean, look at this. How am I supposed to dodge that? Bart's Nightmare is a glorified minigame collection, but the minigames are unfair and the way to get to them is convoluted. It's designed this way though, because if you could just get to the minigames and they were a fair challenge, then you would beat the game in less than an hour. This was a lot of games back then, especially licensed games, because renting a game was actually a thing, and if you beat a game in a day, then there's no need to buy it. There are some games that do this difficulty well, like Battletoads, but most of the time it's just playing a mediocre game over and over, because this is what you wasted your Christmas gift on. Virtual Bart is sort of the sequel to Bart's Nightmare, as both of them are minigame collections. This one takes place at the school science fair, where Bart hooks himself up to Martin's virtual reality machine. Unlike Bart's Nightmare, Virtual Bart just has a spinning wheel that determines what game you play. The tomato is a minigame where you have to throw tomatoes at everyone at the school. You hold the throw button and use this line to determine where you're going to throw. It's simple to understand, but most of these targets move just a little too fast to hit them. There were many times I would hit right between two people. And honestly, I think that's more impressive. I should win for that. Next is a water slide level. We are 10 games and 4 seasons into this franchise, and we finally got something that remotely resembles the show. Season 2, episode 18. So you just go left and right avoiding shit. The hard part comes from the branching paths, and you have to hope you don't get one with Homer stuck in it. Do you want to know how to tell which side has Homer in it? Well, just look at the shading on this guy's tank top and pick the shaded side. How intuitive. If you make too many mistakes and that meter goes down, some of the branching paths will end the level. Oh, he's fine. Here we have Bart in a Mad Max situation. It's somehow more original than modern Simpsons episodes. It's a road rash style game, and you can fire a water balloon gun and kick bikers next to you. The gun has a very strange reach, so it's hard to hit stuff. This specific minigame plays better on Super Nintendo, since you can use the bumpers to kick in both directions, and the Mode 7 graphics look nicer.
Oh no. No!
You know, for a second, I really thought this game was just going to show Simpsons snuff. The next game, you play as Baby Bart doing acrobatics through the trees. That's one spry baby. Next one is a platformer where Bart has been turned into a pig and has to rescue pigs from a ham factory. Hey, points for originality, I guess. If you hold up while jumping, you can bounce around like in DuckTales. It's pretty fun. However, the level is kind of open-ended and it's easy to get lost in, so it becomes a little boring. Finally, we have the crown jewel of Virtual Bart, the dinosaur level. You play as Bart Raptor, and everyone from the show is a caveman. Oh, looks like Mo really did get some caveman hookers. But my god, it's a platformer that controls well. It only took us 9 games. You got a tail whip, and you can pick up this roar power-up that kills everything on screen. The platforming is tight and responsive, at least on Genesis. For some reason, the SNES version just seems slower and more stiff. This dinosaur level can be hard, but it never seems unfairly hard. I actually almost beat it on my first try, and beating anything in these Acclaim games is an accomplishment. You can tell they put most of their time into this dinosaur level, and it's honestly pretty fun. I wish all the minigames were just platformers like this one. Virtual Bart is a much better game than Bart's Nightmare. Not only because it doesn't have the stupid overworld, but the minigames have much better controls and they're actually fun. Most of them. I can't believe Virtual Bart, specifically on Genesis, is the best game since the arcade game. Here we have Bart vs. the Beanstalk for Game Boy. I think this is the epitome of, fuck it, just put Bart in something. So it's Jack and the Beanstalk. Do Zoomers know Jack and the Beanstalk? It's a platformer where you have this slingshot that has the worst reach ever. It just disappears halfway through. Same as that game with the slaves. Gotta wonder if that's a programming limitation or deliberate bullshit. Your slingshot might as well be a melee weapon with how short it can reach. So you're just going up the beanstalk collecting coins. The worst part about this game is that if you fall too fast, the game can't keep up with you, and it just kills you. Doesn't matter that there's an entire level under you. You'll just die. And it's all the way to the start of the level. Wouldn't be so bad if these bounce pads didn't launch you so high that the game can't keep up with you. Then, when you get to the end, the game says you need more coins, man. Oh, fuck off. Finally, moving away from Bort, we have Itchy and Scratchy Mini Golf. Why didn't they just make Simpsons Golf? I'd play that. Everyone would play that. It's 2D mini golf where you have to actually walk to where your ball is while avoiding enemies. It's kind of like the Aqua Teen video game. Par 16? Well, that sounds pretty generous. Damn, this might be one of the most violent Game Boy games ever. Right next to Mortal Kombat 4. Alright, got to the end, only 4 over par, and I just have to use this hill to get in the middle of that shoe. Okay, let's try that again. Fuck. Mulligan. Fuck.
Just made it.
Jesus, what kind of first level is this? It's not like controlling your shot is that easy, so to put this hill and this big shoe on the first stage just seems sadistic. Believe it or not, getting 81 over par on the first hole kinda turned me off from this game. Here's the other Itchy and Scratchy game. The Itchy and Scratchy game. This time you play as Itchy, and much like Bart's Nightmare, you just wander around wondering what to do. You go left, right, you try these doors, but you can't seem to make any progress. There's this cheese power-up that gives you a big speed boost, and I always like going fast, but here it seems more like a detriment. So after checking a guide, turns out all you have to do is kill Scratchy to beat the level. I mean, some kind of hint in the game would have been nice. but I guess that's the concept of the show, so fuck me, right? After that, it's pretty easy. Just wait for Scratchy and attack. This is one where it isn't that bad, but it isn't all that good either. After the Itchy and Scratchy game, The Simpsons took a break from regular console games and released some more interactive experiences. 1996 had the Simpsons Cartoon Studio, which let you use pre-made animations to make your own cartoon. They released tons of these under different licenses, and I'm sure we've all played with one of these games growing up. 1997 gave us Virtual Springfield, an interactive experience that basically lets you walk around Springfield and find gags. It looks pretty cool, but it's abandonware, so... Then for about 3 years, we didn't get a Simpsons game until we got the first ever Simpsons game in 3D. Simpsons Bowling for the arcade. It's fucking bowling. You use the buttons to position your character and use a trackball to determine the power of your shots. The charm comes from the dialogue from the actual voice cast. Unfortunately, the dialogue wasn't working for me. Man, this sure looks funny. Fuck. God damn, I wish I could hear that. Fuck, man. If you played a bowling game before, you've played Simpsons Bowling. Well, it took 13 games, but we finally got a Treehouse of Horror game. You'd think they would have done this sooner, considering Treehouse of Horror is all about making up weird scenarios for The Simpsons. But I guess THQ thought a Game Boy Color game in 2001 was the appropriate time. It's a side-scroller where the camera can't properly keep up with you. It's almost nauseating. Combine that with the really delayed controls, and this game legitimately gives me a headache. Your goal is to get the fuses to light up the house, or else this sentient toilet brush will kill you. You think the scrubbing bubbles understand their fate? This one is a lot more simple, but goddamn, the graphics, the looping Simpsons Halloween theme, the delayed controls, and everything makes this feel like psychological torture. It could be emulation, but even if the music didn't feel slow and the camera didn't keep stuttering, you just have a monotonous collectathon where you keep going back to the same couple rooms. Real shame that this is the only Treehouse of Horror game. The concept could have been used for so much more, but instead we get this. Here we have the second 3D Simpsons game. That doesn't sound that impressive. Simpsons Wrestling for the PS1. It's a wrestling game, although I'd say it's more similar to something like Power Stone than the WWE games. You have 3 attacks, a grab, and a jump, all of them connected to your stamina bar. Everything requires stamina, so you'll have to wait if you want to use your more powerful attacks, and each character is different. When your character gets knocked down, this blue stun meter will show up. The more damage you've taken, the harder it'll be to get back up. The goal is to pin someone while they're stunned, and hopefully the meter doesn't empty before you count to 3. It's fucking wrestling, you get it. The jump attacks are insane. You bounce off each other's heads and go flying like it's Dragon Ball Z. With only 6 attacks, 3 on the ground and 3 in the air, the game doesn't have a lot of variety. But its physics are so ridiculous that it becomes kind of fun. It's also funny just to see these characters beat the shit out of each other. This is for taking the Lego episode. The balancing is whack. There are characters that have broken homing attacks. Like Marge will send her 1-year-old daughter after you. Smithers is the worst with Blinky, who follows you around and instantly stuns you. Were you expecting this game to be balanced? This game has been infamous as one of the worst games of all time, and while I wouldn't call it good, it's certainly not terrible. You can have some stupid fun in quick play sessions or playing with a friend. I remember game magazines were calling this one of the worst games of all time. But there are worse games than this video. A lot of the previous games were broken in a frustrating way, but this game is broken in an entertaining way. I think this is kind of like Shaq Fu, where the worst game of all time label is given to something with a recognizable IP. It's also probably because this game came out in 2001. I thought it was like 1999, but no, this came out when the PS2 was released. So yeah, spending $40 on this would have been a ripoff. 2001 had 3 Simpsons games come out in the same year. Treehouse of Horror, Wrestling, and... The Simpsons Road Rage. The Simpsons are going to the PS2. And dear God, what are those eyelashes? Well, Neanderthal features aside, this game is a pretty good Crazy Taxi ripoff. The story, like it matters, is that Mr. Burns is making a new transit out of radioactive buses. So the residents of Springfield become taxi drivers to compete with it. So you drive around Springfield picking up residents and dropping them off. The faster you do it, the more money you'll get. Why is Homer taking Marge to the lesbian bar? It's literally Crazy Taxi. So much so that Sega actually threatened to sue Radical Entertainment, but they settled out of court. As a kid, just being able to drive around a 3D Springfield was awesome. There's a total of 6 maps, and admittedly, some are better than others. Like the Springfield Dam sounds cool, but it's very restrictive on where you can actually go. Compare that to the nuclear power plant, which is wide open, except for the giant fence around it. Looking at reviews back then, the collision was the biggest complaint with this game. That and a lack of content. Which sure, if you're buying this game for $40 to $50 in 2001, when GTA 3 came out a month ago, a Crazy Taxi ripoff with some shitty collision isn't that appealing. But playing it now as the arcade-style game that it is, it's fun for a quick sesh. Although I will say the loading times are frustrating. Even restarting a mission can take like 20 seconds. This was an early 6th generation game, so fuck that, these loading times suck. But even with its flaws, Road Rage is still a fun game. And the Crazy Taxi model works well for exploring Springfield and playing a variety of characters that I haven't unlocked yet. Well, we can't forget the Game Boy Advance version. Wait, can we? When you load up the game, it's actually pretty impressive 3D for the Game Boy Advance. Then you actually drive around the map and bump into everything. I can't tell what I can drive through. Everything is flat. I mean, couldn't they come up with better barriers than just some green squares? It's fun to mess around in Sunday drive mode for a bit, but if you thought the console version was restrictive, this is like trying to make an open world driving game in Super Mario Kart. The Game Boy Advance version should have just been a racing game. Hell, it might have been a hidden GBA gem if it was. Come to think of it, how did The Simpsons never get a racing game? Seems like every franchise gets a racing game. Even fucking Yu-Gi-Oh got one. No racing game, no party game, and no sports games except for bowling. Maybe all the developers are trying to be unique to stay true to the show, but the arcade game has barely anything to do with the show, and everyone loves that one. I mean, it doesn't matter if you rip something off so long as it's good. Well, for the next game, they did rip something off, but it sure as hell ain't good. The reason I didn't have Simpsons Skateboarding in my Pro Skater ripoffs video is because I wanted to talk about it here. But if it was in that video, it would easily be the worst game on that list. Even worse than that rollerblading game with the clown. Also, I admit I was too hard on Thrasher. The Simpsons Skateboarding is a Tony Hawk ripoff, and it fails in every aspect. There's no cutscenes or story, which isn't a big deal, but makes the game feel like an alpha. You boot up the game and get a Rastafarian remix of the Simpsons theme? Oh shit, motherfucker! Right away, the controls feel terrible. Turns are very stiff. Even when I played someone with good turning, it didn't make much of a difference. Plus, you have to hold forward to actually speed up. Same as Evolution Skateboarding. As I said before, holding forward instead of holding Ollie to speed up just makes approaching half-pipes more difficult. Holding Ollie in this game slows you down, so you have to time jumps perfectly at the end of half-pipes to get decent air. Not that it really matters, because sometimes you'll just go fucking flying off ramps, and sometimes you'll lose all your momentum going up half-pipes. There's also no challenge since the game automatically lands for you. You can't spin, so to build up points, you just do multiple tricks. Also, anytime you go off a half-pipe, the camera follows you in a really awkward way, and you can't see what's in front of you when you land. Each level has a challenge/training mode that teaches you various tricks. I think it's stupid that they have 2 different challenges for the vertical and horizontal grab tricks. Just make it one challenge. Also, this first set of challenges is supposed to teach you the basics, but they don't tell you about manuals. I legit thought this game didn't have manuals until I looked at the tricks menu. What the fuck? Even the menu is fucked. I have to keep tapping down just to go through the menu. For one challenge, you have to grind for 5 seconds, but they give you the worst rail to do it on. You need good jump stats just to get on this rail, and then it goes upwards, and you can't build enough momentum to go up it. Then when you start to go backwards, the grind balance meter reverses, and it completely messes up your coordination. This is before they teach you how to fucking manual. Grinding in this game sucks because you can't even jump off rails properly. See, when grinding, you hold Ollie and an arrow comes up. There's a little bit of a delay. Then, if you want to jump left or right, you have to tilt the arrow that way. But it also tilts your grind meter in that direction. So if you want to jump to the side, most of the time, you're going to throw off your balance. In Pro Skater, there's no delay. You just jump to the side and that's it. You don't have to wait for the magic arrow. You get to the levels and they're structured kind of like Tony Hawk 4, where you can skate freely and find missions. The missions are these little squiggly circles on the ground. So yeah, good luck finding those. In this mission, I have to spell Skinner. You know, like the skate missions. And even the hit detections on the letters suck. Like I have to embrace the letters upon my breasts. Oh, and you hear that beeping? That's the timer. It beeps for the entire mission. You know how timers only beep during the last 10 seconds or so to indicate that time is almost up? This is what beeps every second for the whole 2 minutes. The maps themselves are also poorly made. There's a lot of empty space with nothing to do tricks off of. There's grass that slows you down for no reason. And sometimes shit will just be in the way of ramps. They even messed up the character select screen. At first, you can't see their stats. So you select them, they skate down, and then you can see their stats. Why not just make this the character select screen? There's not even a free skate mode. If you want to play a level with another character, you have to unlock that level with that character. At least there's cheat codes so you don't have to do all this stuff. Hold on, let me try playing a character with maxed out stats. Nope, still sucks. I mean, I'm almost impressed that they messed up every aspect of this game. The Simpsons Skateboarding is an abysmal experience. It's not even worth a curiosity play as a fan of The Simpsons and Pro Skater. If you can't already tell what I think of this game, are you deaf, son? Can you not understand what I'm saying unless there's a number at the end of it? What are you? A Destiny player? After one of the worst Simpsons games of all time, we got the best Simpsons game with 2003's Simpsons Hit and Run. It was everything that people wanted at the time, a Simpsons Grand Theft Auto. This game is many things. It's the best Simpsons game, one of the best licensed games, a GTA because your parents wouldn't let you buy it, or a GTA because your dumbass bought a GameCube. Using Road Rage as a base, Hit and Run lets you do 7 missions on each level, with each level having different characters and maps. You get to play as every family member, which is another important part of a good Simpsons game. Although I can't believe they would make us play such a harmful, disrespectful, evil, and non-beloved character who shouts racial slurs.
Move it, Cracker.
Oh well. At least the show was able to fix its Indian representation by getting rid of the only Indian character. There are 3 maps used for the whole game: Evergreen Terrace, Downtown Springfield, and the Springfield Harbor. They use each map twice, and each time new things open up, like being able to go into Burns' mansion on Marge's level and run over his human chessboard. The final level is Evergreen Terrace, although it's Treehouse of Horror themed, which is such a great touch. Unfortunately, on level 7, they had to cut out a whole part of the map, and that was most likely due to development time. The development of this game was pretty rough, but the devs did their best to make something that Simpsons fans would love, and I think they did a great job. What makes this game so beloved amongst Simpsons fans is the attention to detail on each of the maps. There are tons of sight gags, locations from the show, and actual hidden gags that you can interact with. Some of the gags are lame, and they reuse them when you revisit the level, but it's still a fun thing to look for. There are also collectible cards on each map, each one with a very specific reference.
I know what that is.
There is something so special about seeing how far the Simpsons house was from the Quickie Mart, or using the Stonecutter's tunnel, or looking below the Springfield Dam and finding Camp Krusty. There's also finding the actual side characters and not just the generic NPCs. And they even have unique lines for when you repeatedly run them over.
Do this to a war hero.
The maps are so dense that, as a kid, it felt like an open world. But in reality, each map is actually a circle. I wouldn't call the graphics in this game good. The Simpsons characters don't transfer well into 3D, and a lot of the characters have caveman brows. Also, every mission briefing has the characters' models just flapping their mouths and doing the same reused animations. Like scratching head, raising both hands, and shaking fist. The reused animations can actually make some moments funnier with how they don't match the dialogue.
Here's your crazy medicine, Grandpa.
Hot diggity! Sweet, sweet medication! Gimme, gimme, gimme!
Oh.
Still though, the graphics have a certain charm to them, and the actual cutscenes are pretty fun. Much like Grand Theft Auto, the game excels at unintentional comedy, with NPCs constantly jumping into walls or into traffic, or the canned voice lines leading to some hilarious results.
Acceleration to the max.
While I don't think the actual dialogue is consistently hilarious, there are some jokes that get a legitimate laugh out of me.
Oh, God! I destroyed the limo and killed Bart!
No murderer ye be. He wasn't in the limo. He got out and he boarded that ship.
Can you take me there?
Nar, I hate the sea.
Now, about your query. My grandpappy done seed one of them corn drawings once, but he's with Allah now.
The final level is probably the funniest one because you're just constantly sending characters to their deaths. Guys, we did it! Apu is dead! The Simpsons is good again! The story doesn't actually pick up until the end of the second level, where the plot quickly escalates from Bart trying to get a copy of Bone Storm to being abducted by aliens. The story then becomes Kang and Kodos using mind-control Buzz Cola to increase the ratings of their Earth reality show. It's the same plan that the Juzians had in South Park. While you're driving, you're treated to a fantastic soundtrack. The shop theme, simple as it is, has a very comforting tone to it. Every character has their own theme. Like Bart's theme sounds straight out of Sonic Adventure. But my favorite is Marge's theme, which sounds like a Tom Jones song, which is understandable since Tom Jones is Marge's favorite artist. Really shows that the devs were true fans of the show and wanted to put that DNA of the golden age into the game. While you can explore on foot and even ragdoll your wife with a little kick, seriously, the kick sound effect is ingrained in my mind. 95% of Hit and Run is driving. Luckily, the driving feels really good, better than Road Rage, and it doesn't have the weird collision problems, most of the time. You can boil down the missions into 6 categories: race a car, follow a car, get away from a car, destroy a car, hit a car and pick up their items, or just pick up items. There are only 2 missions that are completely on foot, and this game doesn't have great platforming. Luckily, the game's platforming isn't that punishing, so these missions are kind of a nice little break from all the driving. But like I said, the driving is good, and there's a ton of different cars from the show's history to try out. There's even hidden vehicles on each level, and I can't tell you how excited I was when I found the rocket car, only to immediately destroy it. Each level also has 3 optional races you can do to unlock a new car, plus a race with the mob you can bet on to get more coins. Coins are pretty damn important in this game, because you're gonna have to buy certain costumes or cars in order to progress. It's completely arbitrary though, and it's only done to pad the length of the game. Like Lisa has to get her cool disguise for a mission, but the entire mission is done in a car. In Marge's level, you need 700 coins in order to buy 2 different outfits. This can be annoying, but I just smashed every box, vending machine, and bee that I ran into, and I had enough money most of the time. There were only 3 times I had to go out to look for money, and even then, I didn't need that much extra cash. It does suck that you have to save your money, so you can't get any optional costumes or vehicles until you beat the game. Why the hell did I buy Tall Bart? Difficulty is another aspect of this game that is often criticized. Once you get to level 5, the game becomes significantly harder, and for most of the missions, you have to know where the shortcuts are if you even want to come close to beating them. It doesn't help that the AI in the traffic can be completely random, so sometimes you get a great run, and other times you'll get sandwiched between 2 cars. Set to Kill is the most infamously hard mission in the game. You have to destroy 25 laser stands with a very fast car, and then the game gives you the minimum amount of time to get back to Krusty Studios. Believe it or not, I was actually able to beat this mission on my 4th try, something I never did as a kid. If you fail a mission 5 times, the game allows you to skip it, which should be a sign that some of these missions were maybe a little unfair. I actually had more trouble with level 6's final mission, and that's because one of the shortcuts has a chance to slow you down. You have to use this bowling alley shortcut, but if you approach it from above, you can't see the mechanical hand coming down for the gag, so you just have to wing it. Maybe it's because I've beaten this game twice in my life, but I got through all the missions without skipping a single one. I was even able to do the final mission on my first try. Some of that is luck with the traffic and the AI, and you have to know the shortcuts beforehand. But I also think most of you are just bad at video games. Not that it was easy. I can see why that final mission turned Germa insane.
No, get in the beam. No, don't do this to me. Get in the beam. Get in here.
I'm surprised that the only multiplayer mode in this game is the overhead slot car game. This could actually be the Simpsons racing game I was talking about. And even though the maps are made for races, and they have 3 racetracks on each one, this is the only multiplayer racing. I guess they didn't have time. Considering this game's difficult development, it's a miracle it came out as good as it did. Is Hit and Run a great game? No, but it is really good. And that's pretty great. People overhype this game because of nostalgia, and if you're not a Simpsons fan, then you'll probably get bored of it. But the driving does control well, and it's satisfying when you pull off some sick maneuvers. Hit and Run is a loving tribute to the show's golden age. You can tell that the developers were fans of the show and really wanted the players to feel like a stupid idiot. If it was just nostalgia keeping this game relevant, then there wouldn't be such a dedicated modding scene for this game. There are mods that connect the 3 maps into one big one, mods that let you play as the other characters, brand new fan-made levels and missions, and even a full-on HD remaster that upscales all the textures for the game and reanimates the cutscenes. I will say that the weird 3D Simpsons has a certain charm that isn't captured by just replacing it in 2D, but beggars can't be choosers. So surprise, Hit and Run is still a fun game, despite some glaring flaws. It's a must-play for any Simpsons fan and still hasn't been topped. There you go. My thumbnail was technically not misleading because I put a question mark. Well, we're at the final Simpsons console game. The Simpsons Game. Oh, it's the Simpsons Game? We'll see about that. This game came out on everything in 2007. In fact, they even make that joke in the trailer.
Coming this fall to every platform ever made.
Whatever.
People were actually confused by this joke, so they had to change it. I mean, the Atari Jaguar and the GameCube were on the same level in 2007. The concept was that the Simpsons would explore inside the world of video games. Yeah, I didn't much care for this idea after being able to go around Springfield and hit and run. I remember seeing a preview in Game Informer where the joke was God of Wharf. And what little excitement I had for this game was completely gone. I also only had a Wii, so I knew I would be getting an inferior version of the game. But now I can finally play the PS2 version. The PS2 version sucks. Let's just play the PS3 version. The game starts with a tutorial in the land of chocolate, which is a great idea. I love seeing the same joke but with worse animation. The graphics are done well to portray the Simpsons in a cel-shaded style, although the outlines never look quite right. I know part of that is my own capture footage, but even looking at long plays, the outlines are never completely clean. This game is a standard licensed platformer with basic combat and a double jump.
Nice work, video game guy.
Oh. We're doing this, huh? The video game cliches are one of the collectibles, as well as these little tokens specific to each character. What's funny about the cliches is that there's only 2 per stage, so sometimes a cliche you are already doing will be unlocked in a much later level. And every time, it's never funny. The next level starts with Bart getting the manual for the game. And realizing that every family member has special powers. Bart can glide, Homer turns into the average American, Lisa can use the hand of Buddha to move stuff, and Marge can rally lemmings. Between each level, you are free to explore Springfield, which is the game's overworld. It's cool at first, but then you realize it's kind of empty. Like, the map has the locales from the show, but there's no gags. Sure, you can beat up citizens, but it doesn't have the same funny ragdoll as Hit and Run. The only thing to really do is find the collectibles, and there are way too many of them. I don't mind that certain characters have certain collectibles, and I don't mind that you need certain characters to get to them. What I do mind is that there are collectibles just lying around that any character can get to, but you need to go back and switch characters to get them. It's the worst part of DK64. In fact, in the PS2 and the Wii versions, they don't even have the overworld, and it kind of shows how pointless it is. But you want to play the PS3 or 360 version, because its camera is much less frustrating. The levels are basic puzzle solving and platforming while switching between your two characters. It was on the third level that I had an epiphany. This is a fucking Lego game. The switching between characters, the average platforming, average puzzle solving, below average combat, and aggressive linearity. This is the same formula that the Lego games use. Although the dialogue in Lego Star Wars is better. I like Lego Star Wars, but I got tired of the Lego game formula during Lego Star Wars. This T-rated game has gameplay for babies. Look, I'm 90 years old. I need something a little more intellectually stimulating. This game has no feedback. Enemies just fall over. At least in Hit and Run, you got a nice sound effect and ragdolling when you hit something. Eventually, when all the family members realize they're in a video game, Kang and Kodo start to attack Springfield. You have 3 missions you can do in any order, and at least these ones are based on Treehouse of Horror segments like the Killer Dolphins and the Giant Lard Lad. The game will sometimes have a segment that's modeled after an old arcade game, and I gotta say, this Space Invaders segment was awful. Imagine playing Space Invaders with bad homing attacks. It's both mindless and frustrating. You can hold L1 to hold your place, but then it fires crooked. So you just have to run out firing your slingshot hoping you don't get hit. This is worse than actual Space Invaders from 1978. I was almost ready to call it quits here, but I powered through, and I found nothing. You think this game magically gets better after 3 hours?
Guys, look, the hatch opens after every 4 laser bursts. That's the weak spot when we need to fire.
Hey, Kodos, that ugly kid's right. Why are we exposing our weak spot after every 4 laser bursts?
You're right. Why do we even need to expose our weak spot at all?
Go back to Dorkly, you Nimrod. The game had the actual Simpsons writers Tim Long, Matt Selman, and Matt Warburton write over 8,000 lines of dialogue for the game. The lead designer for this game, Greg Rizzer, referred to this game as the first playable season of The Simpsons. You know, even in 2007, that's not the compliment you think it is. And look, I know there's a lot more writing that's required for a video game than a TV show, but it's still not good. So after that, the Simpsons are teleported into the game engine, where they meet Will Wright.
Dad, that's Will Wright, designer of Sim City and The Sims.
Don't forget my biggest flop, Sim Sandwich. Its failure drove me mad. Mad! That's why I live here now. Finding a home for old games nobody plays anymore. Any of these fellows look familiar?
No, because the pixels never looked like that, you dumb fuck. This would have been a nice time to mention an actual old Simpsons game.
No way. The Simpsons game is awesome. Just because every video game up until now has been destroyed and forgotten doesn't mean ours will be.
There's something so arrogant about saying all the previous games are bad and not even mentioning Hit and Run. Typical EA trying to rewrite history.
No video game is safe from an industry that's always chasing the hot new thing. Sure, the Simpsons game is great with its unique upgradable character abilities and its hilarious self-referential cutscenes.
Oh, fuck you.
There are a couple moments like this where the game tries to be self-deprecating, but it just comes off as arrogant. Now that's just mean. So now's the part of the game where you actually go to the parodies of other games. A fantasy game, a World War II shooter, a Japanese game, and Grand Theft Scratchy. I will say the World War II level was kind of fun with this flag mission, since it's one of the only times a level isn't strictly linear, so you can actually find different ways to approach platforms. The Mr. Burns fight at the end also got a laugh out of me.
Your attack is as impotent as I am. Yeah! Rosebud.
See, that's actually using the gameplay to set up a joke. If the game did more of that instead of just references, then it might actually be good. It's kind of like this game Eat Lead, where you play as a disgraced FPS mascot and makes all these self-aware references in the dialogue, but the actual game is just a boring cover shooter. Using the actual gameplay to set up jokes would be pretty challenging both in writing and programming, and this game is ultimately a licensed game meant to capitalize on the Simpsons marketing blitz of 2007. There's only one part of this game where the actual dialogue made me laugh, It honestly took me by surprise.
Chicken! P to the double O, chip, I-E, I'm the dog who's to the extreme.
Did Poochie just say the N-word? When you beat the 4 video game parodies, you come face to face with the Simpsons creator. The actual creator, Matt Groening. Guess who he summons to fight you?
Aw, snap!
Okay, if I'm being fair, if I saw this in 2007, I would have been pretty happy. After you defeat Matt Groening, the Simpsons realize they need to go to their creator's creator. So they go to heaven to confront God. This is the only section of the game where you can play as all 4 family members. After killing the angels of Shakespeare and Ben Franklin, the Simpsons confront God in a DDR minigame. This is the final boss, by the way.
Here's the bad news. Your video game characters. You were designed by computer geeks in cubicles to run around and be controlled by other computer geeks in their bedrooms.
We knew that, Birkenstocks.
Yeah, explain to us the meaning of life.
Okay, those computer geeks who control you, thing is, they're part of a video game too. You see, the planet Earth is my most immersive, detailed video game yet. So, the Simpsons game, your game, is really nothing but a mini-game inside my Earth game.
Oh my god, this is the plot of a Channel Awesome movie.
Are we going to have sex with each other? Of course.
Well, that's the Simpsons game, and man is it mediocre. If this script is anything, it's lazy. I mean, I get you have to make a video game, but the gameplay is so fucking bland that you think they could come up with some actual jokes. They relied so much on pop culture references, they forgot to actually make jokes. This game is nothing. This came out in 2007, which coincidentally is when the Big Bang Theory and nerd culture became mainstream. The video game references are completely surface level, and although this game will constantly remind you that it's a video game, it's dumbed down to be as accessible as possible. While the Golden Age always had parodies and homages to classic media, the jokes came from the characters and the situations. They're funny even if you don't know the reference, and they're funnier if you do. Plus, so many Golden Age jokes are just funny, no references needed. I could excuse the writing if the game was more fun, but like I said, this is a worse version of a Lego game. I admit that I have nostalgia for Hit and Run, but after going through all these games, I can say that Hit and Run is still a good driving game, but the Simpsons game is a very mediocre platformer. You know, this is probably EA's fault, because after this they made even lazier cash grabs with Simpsons mobile games. There were 2 Java games for pre-smartphones that looked like basic overhead adventure games. There was the Simpsons Arcade game for iOS, but it wasn't really a port of the arcade game. It was just its own lame beat-em-up. The graphics are fine, but they look pretty generic, and you can only play as Homer. And I mean, just look at this. Where's the dank? The dank! Then finally EA said fuck it and made The Simpsons Tapped Out, a freemium city builder game that was just like all the other free-to-play licensed mobile games. Fun fact, Tapped Out is what South Park was making fun of in their freemium game episode.
Well, you just collect coins?
The Simpsons game is a perfect representation of when The Simpsons became a product. Sure, they sold out before, but there is a cool way to sell out, as long as you still make good art. The Japanese are masters of this. The Simpsons that everyone loves, was at a certain time and a certain place. It was a very talented group of writers, and it was a primetime animated show that changed what people thought a cartoon should be. It's not that the show isn't as good as it used to be. That's a given. It's the fact that it's a complete Flanderization of what it was. It's entirely different people trying to recreate something that will never happen again. Like with South Park, whatever you think of its quality now, is still Matt and Trey's voice. Who the fuck is The Simpsons now? All we have are a bunch of Harvard grads. You know, back then, being a Harvard grad meant you were smart. Now, they are the stupidest people on the planet. In a perfect world, The Simpsons would have ended at the movie and then just make bank on syndication and merchandising. Maybe an animated special or short here and there. But no, this fucking show is still doing 20 plus episodes every year. SpongeBob has been going on 25 years, and even though it's also past its golden age, I don't feel as bad for SpongeBob as I do The Simpsons. Because SpongeBob is an absurdist kids show. Well, The Simpsons is trying to be as culturally relevant and clever as it was 30 years ago. But what ends up happening is that they just reference, not satirize, reference, something that happened 9 months ago. Every time I see an iPad or a Twitch stream in a Simpsons episode, it feels wrong. Julie Kavner can't even do the Marge voice anymore. Is there no clearer sign? At least take a break for a decade and come back like Scooby-Doo or something. No show should go on long enough to be threatened by this guy. Is it ironic that you become what you satirized 30 years ago? Or is it just sad? The DS version is a side-scroller that...
My groin!